I've never played the previous Bard's Tale games, but the Bard class has always been my top choice whenever it presents itself. I was really excited when Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, offered a Bard class, even if it was just a singing archer. So, naturally, I became interested in this kit-started renaissance of a series based on bards and their tales. Well, I can't say this is a tale worth hearing right now.
Oh, so bored. Someone there.
The Bard's Tale 4 is an absolute mess. The frame rate is all over the place, and buds are constantly rearing their ugly head to impede or altogether halt progress. Sure, I'd love to save the world from the biggest baddie who has come from somewhere to ruin everything, but you're kidding yourself if you think it's worth slogging through the muck and mire of the Bard's Tale 4 to do so. A lot of games will put their best act up front, especially long RPGs. This is absolutely not true with the Bard's Tale 4. While the combat and puzzles are interesting in their own right, starting in the dreary grey and brown town of Starabray is so unimpressive. NPC models look like garbage, no NPC is ever moving around. Everyone just stands still in their NPC pose, waiting for the player to come up and speak with them. Even the idle animations are poorly constructed, with poses not perfectly looping and jumping from one position to the next. Hell, even conversations feel stilted. For whatever reason, the player must hit continue after everything an NPC says. This isn't an issue when they're speaking on their own, but it makes the back and forth feel so bizarre. Instead of giving the player their choices, they must hit continue, which stops the NPC's voice track. And then the choices show up, and then they choose the desired option. It seems small, and it is, but it's just a constant frustrating oddity. The writing is witty and often funny, and the lines are delivered well.
Now's the perfect time. Everybody's out of their houses, left all their valuables behind.
But what about the monsters? What if we get ate?
Well, be careful, that's all. And if we're caught, well, I run faster than you, so that's alright.
Aye, that's no funny.
Though again, many of the character models look ugly and have lifeless animations, creating a juxtaposition between what the player sees and what they hear. I do want to point out while Starabray and the character models are quite unimpressive, many of the environments are anything but. Maybe the point of Starabray is to make the player want to get the hell out of it as soon as possible. As a whole, the environments provide a stark contrast to the character models and prove that there are certainly talented artists on the team. Exploring these worlds can be a blast, thanks to the often inventive and exciting puzzle designs. Sure, moving block puzzles are nothing new, but the game quickly introduces more interesting designs that keep the player on their toes. These aren't always very clear, and the color is sometimes a factor, but others are intentionally obtuse, with hints excellently strewn about. Solving puzzles is easily the best gameplay element of the Bard's Tale 4. Combat is nowhere near as interesting, but it's not awful. The developers were inspired by Hearthstone's gameplay, and it sure shows. Combat takes place on a 4x4 grid in turn-based fashion. Characters have a limited amount of abilities that can be equipped, so players must choose which ones to utilize in battle. The key to combat is balancing the resources available each turn. Bards can drink alcohol to use abilities. Magic users need to acquire spell points, and everyone taps into the limited opportunity resource for certain abilities. Winning requires at least some thought, though once I discovered a winning strategy, battles played out essentially the same no matter what. It doesn't help that the AI is dumb as a doorknob. Enemies are also limited by resources, and it seems as if they gave no thought as how to best spend them. Certain enemies will not move for numerous turns as others will try to wail away on the player. Animations also tend to play out slowly, making actions feel delayed. Some moves are channeled, meaning they take more than a single turn to execute. After the enemy takes its turn and those moves are used, there is usually this awkward and terrible delay where the moves simply don't happen yet. The whole process feels frustratingly clunky. Even worse yet, leveling up isn't exciting. Leveling grants a skill point that can be used in the character's skill tree. In the early going, I kept thinking to myself, neat, new skills, can't wait to use them. Then, for a while, characters would level up and be shoehorned into taking a node that adds +3 to some stat. Then I figured, oh, that's good, I guess. What's the next node? Oh, it's also just a stat boost. Well, that skill at the bottom seems neat, I guess, even if it takes another 12 hours to unlock. There's also an entire tree dedicated to crafting that someone needed to take, so they more or less waste their skill points to unlock new crafting recipes. To add to that, the inventory system is pretty much useless. Everything is just thrown into an inventory grid with no way to filter or sort or anything that RPGs have had for an eternity. If inventory was limited, then I could understand it. There is no need for a sorting option when you can carry relatively little. However, the Bard's Tale 4 allows for pages upon pages of inventory, and there's a distinct lack of frequent merchant NPCs. After a while, I basically gave up on the inventory entirely. I knew where my potions were, and if I looted something good, it was on the last page. For everything else, I just stopped caring. The arcade save system also poses problems. There are locations around the world that allow the player to either save the game or consume the save point for extra experience, foregoing the save. The issue is that things like crashing or geometry bugs can halt progress, forcing the player to reload their last save. After I lost a chunk of progress the second time due to things out of my control, I never consumed a save point again out of straight up fear that the game would crash and I would lose time. Generally, the experience boost wasn't worth the risk being taken. Okay, let's end on the most positive note there is, the music. The music in the Bard's Tale 4 is appropriately fantastic. Booting up the game and hearing A Summer's Day in Starbray just brings a huge smile to my face.
Snow in summer, ice in my heart, death's cold fingers tear us apart.
The Gaelic music fits perfectly with the game's theme and setting, and I'll often find myself stopping just to listen to some random NPC sing their little tune. Listen, if you're watching or reading this in the future, go and check the recent Steam reviews. My long-term guess is that they'll be rather positive on the game. A lot of the issues are tech-related: crashes, geometry bugs, load times, and the frame rate to be all fixed with patches. As of now, the interesting puzzles and fantastic music are not worth suffering through the bugs, lackluster models, and mediocre combat and skills. If your interest peaked here, wishlist it and come back at a later time. I have no doubt that this game will reach its potential, but as of right now, it's not even close. But while you're still here in the future, for more written reviews, news, original features, and more, be sure to head on over to Destructoid.com.